Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news: subpoenaed. Former Vice President Mike Pence has now been subpoenaed by the special counsel investigating Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. A source is telling CNN that the special counsel wants documents and testimony, both related to Trump's actions leading up to the election and the January 6th insurrection. Pence, of course, was at the center of Trump's efforts to cling to power. Trump repeatedly pressured his then vice president, who, of course, was the one who was going to go in, right, to Congress and the Senate, oversee the certification of the Electoral College to block or deny Biden's win. Here's what happened.
I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. Because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. All Vice President Pence has to do is send it back to the states to recertify, and we become president, and you are the happiest people.
Pence, of course, refused, and he has since talked about why. Here he is at a CNN town hall.
I had one higher loyalty, and that was to God and the Constitution. And that's what set in motion the confrontation that would come to pass on January 6th. Because I had taken an oath to the Constitution of the United States.
Evan Perez is out front live in Washington. And Evan, this is extremely significant. You're talking about a former vice president of the United States, right? Subpoenaed in the January 6th criminal investigation into the former president of the United States. This is important. What more are you learning?
That's right. This is an important moment, certainly, in this investigation, Erin. It's something that certainly we knew there were negotiations behind the scenes. We reported back in November that the Justice Department had approached the vice president's team about trying to get his testimony, and we know that he has certainly a lawyer, Emmett Flood, who is a hawk when it comes to issues related to executive privilege. So we knew that this was going to be a very difficult conversation, certainly for the Justice Department, to try to get to some of the things that Mike Pence knows. And as you just played some of those clips, you can see that he knows a lot. He is an important witness to this investigation. And the Justice Department and Jack Smith, the new special counsel, absolutely want to get some of those answers. What we know is that, this is obviously related to January 6th. That's what Caitlin Collins is told by a source. And we know that Mike Pence and his team, when they published a memoir back in November, they knew that things that were being put in that book were going to be essentially open the door for prosecutors to come and ask him questions. So you can bet that, knowing his lawyer, he is going to go comply with the subpoena. There are some questions that I'm sure he's not going to be prepared to answer because he still believes that it is shielded by executive privilege. And then the Justice Department will have the option of going to a judge to try to force his compliance to answer additional questions. That's something that's probably going to be down the line. But just to give you a sense, Erin, back, in his book, in his memoir, he talks a lot about some of his conversations with Donald Trump, including going back to December, right? Talking about beginning to talk about challenging the vote, and those key meetings in January involving John Eastman and some of the people who were putting together this plan to try to overturn the election. So all of those things are now open for prosecutors to ask him about.
All right, Evan, thank you very much. And of course, as you get more information, I know you'll give it to us. Ryan Goodman and John Dean are out front with me now. So Ryan, let's just start with this. This is the former Vice President of the United States, subpoenaed by the special counsel related to the former President of the United States, right? It is an incredible moment in and of itself. Pence is somebody, right, that the January 6th committee had eventually just said, let go, right? But the special counsel is taking the successor step. They're going to a subpoena. What is the significance of that at this point?
So it's a historically significant moment, as you describe, and it is he's an important witness for the Justice Department, and he is one of the unknowns in the sense that they already know what other Pence senior aides told the January 6th committee, but there is no transcript from Pence for the January 6th committee because he didn't show up to answer their questions. So I think it's very important, and basically it looks like it'll be a slam dunk for the Justice Department to override executive privilege. So it's maybe more just a question of time.
Right. So let me just follow up on that point. You think it'll be a slam dunk in the executive privilege? Because as Evan's describing it, he can claim it, then they have to go to a court, right? What does that do? You say slam dunk, but does that mean it's fast?
It can be very fast. Just to give an example, his two senior aides, Mark Short and Greg Jacob both invoked executive privilege, then the judge could immediately decide the question. And from all the reports are that she said, no, there's a standing Supreme Court opinion, United States v. Nixon, you cannot claim it. And then they went back to the grand jury to answer questions.
So, John, Trump has been extremely vocal, right, about his anger against Trump for certifying the election on January 6th again and again and again, right? This is a matter of public record. Just to remind everybody, right, of what Trump said and how crucial Pence was in this moment under investigation. Here's Trump.
I think Mike has been very badly hurt by what took place with respect to January 6th. I think he's been mortally wounded, frankly, because I see the reaction he's getting from people. They say, why didn't you just hand it back to the legislatures? Why didn't you do it?
Right, and there's countless where that came from, John. But does it matter at this point? Now you've got Pence subpoenaed in the special counsel investigation into Trump. Does Trump's public ire and enmity over this issue and Pence's behavior matter?
Well, it does matter. It so shows Trump's intent. And I think there's nobody better who can explain that than the vice president, who was the point of the anger and the effort to try to get the vice president to do something that was against the law. He refused to do it. As he said, he had taken an oath to the Constitution, and he was not going to breach that for Donald Trump with his harebrained scheme, which we don't even know how it would have played out had he have done what Trump wanted, other than he would be breaking the law. It certainly wouldn't have guaranteed Trump the presidency, but it would have been just a flagrant violation of the process for counting votes. So this is timely. This is a big deal that they're bringing him in to get him on the record. The executive privilege will not hold, as Ryan said. The Nixon case establishes that. Yeah. Nixon's privilege was much broader than even this. So it's going to go down to the count, and it's proceeding nicely.
So, Ryan, what does this signal to you? I know you've got, right, Jack Smith overseeing multiple things, right? One of which is the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. This is specifically January 6th, right? The criminal probe into the former president of the United States. So the fact that he is subpoenaing Pence in that probe at this time, does that signal something to you about where Jack Smith, the special counsel, is headed?
It does. It signals and suggests that he's nearing an end stage. You only go to Pence after you've already established what the other witnesses are going to say so that it can be the most informed back and forth in terms of what they say, and ask him with the grand jury, that they have as much visibility and information when they're asking him those kinds of questions. So they already maybe know the answers to some of the questions. They can verify where he's coming from. He is such the grand poobah in a certain sense, yeah, that you would only really reach out to him after everything else is said and done. So I think that it's a strong sign that Jack Smith is reaching, that final lap.
Well, John Dean, reaching the final lap in the January 6th probe, which I would say most all views that we've heard, right, it was the harder one to establish versus the classified documents, which was perceived as a more open and shut, clear criminal case, right? Does this indicate that not only is he in the final lap, but the final lap towards indictment?
That's true. He is certainly at least narrowing his witnesses down to test their strength, to see if they indeed would support an indictment. I don't think he's made that decision yet, but this is clearly a part of the process that he's got to go through to decide if this is a prosecutable case. And it is a complex case. This is just part of it. We don't know how broad he's going to go or how narrow he seeks to draw the case. But this is a big deal that shows he is certainly going forward. And I'm sure Donald Trump isn't happy to hear this news.
No, I would imagine not. And Ryan, on the point of Pence, right, obviously the executive privilege argument likely to come. He didn't appear before the committee, the January 6th committee, but he did allow his chief lieutenants to. And he has at moments talked about the significance of this day for him, right, that it had a profound effect on him, the insurrection itself. Here he is.
January 6th was a dark day in the history of the United States Capitol. Lives were lost, and many were injured.
Ryan, what do you think his testimony will be like?
It's difficult to say. I think that if he speaks his truth, it could be very damaging to Trump. because his truth is that his life was put at risk, and his chief of staff even warned his Secret Service detail on January 5th that the vice president, his own safety and security could be put at risk because Trump would turn against him the next day. So if he tells that to the grand jury, that is the kind of coercive pressure that would amount to a crime under the federal laws for pressuring somebody to disobey their legal duties. And so that's what, is I think the most likely outcome, but they don't know until they know. And I think that's why it's so important for Jack Smith to get him to before the grand jury and get a very good indication of how he would testify were he in the witness stand.